What's good, guys? So now that Black Myth Wukong is a resounding success, I wanted to kind of address this article by that Park Place. It talks about the basically a thread on ResetEra of people's reactions to it in real time, particularly surrounding the whole like feminist versus anti-feminist thing that IGN brought up based off of translations by the lead developer, not lead developer, one of the founders of the studio that made this. Anyways, before we get into any of that, if you guys found this interesting, a like and subscribe is super appreciated. Helps me out as a small channel. Also, too, I did go over the thread. So before we get into the article, I want to present essentially a few pieces of information that I think are relevant that the article may not address because it's really trying to paint it all behind a, anti-woke narrative. They're trying to basically accredit the game's success entirely to the anti-woke crowd, which I think is misleading. So I wanted to address a few points that I think are important from that thread. First off, this game is extremely big in China. This is their one of really their first AAA games that was made by them. It covers a piece of literature that is very much tied to their culture. I kind of equate it to what it would be to Greek people if you made a game in Greece that was entirely about Homer's Odyssey. Like that's sort of I think an equivalent on a smaller scale. Also, this game had a peak concurrent user on Steam of 2.358 million, something like that. It's the highest of any single player game, and it's the second highest total ever, right behind, I believe, PUBG. It surpassed Power World. Now, peak concurrent users is a somewhat good indicator to know that a game has sold well. How well is debatable because, like, it surpassed games like Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Power World, and we kind of know the sales of all those games. But when peak concurrent users is geographically concentrated in a specific area, like in this case, China, uh, while I think the game still sold well, and who knows, I'm not going to say that it couldn't have outsold any of those titles. I just think we have to take into account that because it's geographically concentrated, that those sales will probably be good, but they may not be on par with an Elden Ring or anything like that. And I think a lot of people have been equating sales to this peak concurrent user Steam, and it's just a false correlation. So I want to get that point out there before we get into the article. Anyways, let's address the article. ResetEra users get depressed after Black Myth Wukong breaks concurrent player number records. Now I'm going to address some of the points in this article, but some of these points are repetitive. So if I scroll past anything, that's just because I don't want to rehash the same point over and over again. Numerous individuals who participate on ResetEra became depressed after Black Myth Wukong broke the record for most concurrent players on Steam in a single player game. According to SteamDB, the game currently sits at second most played game based on concurrent player numbers, with 2.358 million players just a day after the game was released. PUBG Battlegrounds still maintains the top spot. On the thread, Black Myth Wukong hit 2.2 million concurrent players on Steam, which I don't think that's the actual name of the thread because the thread was started when it was like just surpassing 1 million. But anyways, I digress. Numerous individuals shared how depressed and frustrated they were due to the amount of players playing the game. Tex Honos, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. Said that's unexpected. To be honest, it's just the start. I was thinking 200 to 250,000. Guess people just don't care nor pay attention to the issue with the devs as usual. Tex, no, they don't. To be honest, the majority of the people don't care about what it was the heads of the studio, and it was an IGN translation of comments that he made, basically saying they were sexist comments. The majority of the people know they don't care about that. And even it's really just a fraction of people who are online. And even out of those people, it's an even smaller fraction that care enough to not purchase a product because of comments by the studio head. Or I don't even know. I think he actually was a co-founder of the studio. Anyways, the whole point is I don't care about the creator's views if those creators' views are not reflected in the creation. You could have a game made by people, let's say on the opposite side. Let's take a Western studio, let's say a Ubisoft studio, for example. You could have a studio where there were multiple people within there who supported gender reassignment for children, which is something I find abhorrent and do not support. If that's not reflected in the game that they create, if the entertainment product, because these are entertainment products they are making, is entertaining, I'm not going to not purchase the product or not experience the product just because a few people within a studio of hundreds have a view that I find objectionable. And so I may not necessarily agree with what this studio founder said, but I don't need to experience products. If you want to get into some sort of hellscape where you need to agree with every single creator in studios of hundreds of people to then support their product, that's up to you. But honestly, that is a miserable road to go down, and best of luck in that endeavor, because that is not a world where the average consumer wants to live, because it is as miserable as it sounds. Anyways, let's get on to some more comments here. Planet Smasher wrote, depressing that a game made by such a horrible dev gets rewarded. Just genuinely sad. I don't understand the mindset of linking a game success to opinions of creators or possible opinions of creators, because we don't really know that the translation is perfect. Either way, if it really has got you to a point where you are actually depressed by this result, then you perhaps need to just get offline. Just get off social media and refocus yourself, and perhaps just reevaluate your entire life, because you have lost the point. You have lost the plot, my friend. Gamers really just don't care by Laughing Banana. Yeah, well, this is a rehash post. No, gamers really just don't care. This one, so the best-selling games of 2023 and probably 2024 can both go in the trash. We've already addressed this. Just because the game hit the concurrent user rate, I don't think that necessarily means its sales are going to match those games. But anyways, I think that was kind of the point that he was making. I think that Park Place has a vested interest because they're anti-woke and presenting this as this game's going to sell on par with Elden Ring. I don't think that's the case at all, or that the game's going to sell on par with Baldur's Gate 3. Either way, like I do think you have to kind of take the middle ground when looking at stuff like this. Boone Tobias, anti-feminist stuff literally helped. The gaming community has a long way to go still, he then added. Edit, or just non-US players, false alarm. Yeah, it's probably kind of in the middle. I don't think the anti-feminist stuff literally helped. There might be fractions where that helped. I think you have to really evaluate. I myself have been actually interested in this game for some time, long before IGN wrote their articles. When we had early trailers for this game, I thought the game looked very visually appealing. I did think the game was going to be more Souls-like than what it is, but I don't need every game to be a Souls-like to enjoy it. I'm actually playing it right now. I just beat Chapter 1, and I am enjoying it. But I don't think... I think we get too wrapped up in the value of these cultural issues on sales. I don't think it's really nearly as influential one way or the other as we try to portray them as. Let's see. Black Myth Wukong explicitly banning feminist propaganda. Now, this is obviously Twitter. This is not from the ResetEra forum by Legal Mindset. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Game Science didn't ban anything. This is basically a memo that went out to people who were receiving a free copy of the game to make content on it. And if they wanted to talk about the feminist propaganda or, China's game industry or any of these things, they were free to do so. They just had to go and buy their own copy of the game. I'm talking about the game right now, and I bought my own copy of the game. The problem is a lot of these people, this is how they make their living. So they need that free copy of the game because that copy comes early and they want to be first to the market with their content. Understandable, but I think it's understandable too that Game Science, because this is earned media, they want their earned media to actually be focused on the product and not basically some IGN article that we don't even know for sure has been translated properly. Now, I'm not saying... I've looked at the comments. I don't know that a proper translation would change it all of that much. But just want to throw that out there because it is important to, I think, address that, or at least to highlight that. They say don't talk about feminist propaganda, isolation, or COVID-19, China's video game policy. I mean, basically what they're saying is we're going to give you a free copy of the game. We want you to talk about the game. They didn't tell you you couldn't talk about technical issues of the game, and the game definitely has some technical issues. They didn't say you couldn't talk about the story or the graphics or any of that. They basically just told you we're giving you a free copy of the game. If you're going to make content on it, please just talk about the game. And I don't really think that's an unreasonable position for them to have. Let's see. Elf Gore wrote, realistically, what do you want them to do? Hogwarts Legacy was going to sell well regardless of how much anybody brought up J.K. Rowling. If mainstream media bringing up her shitty reviews can't really stop Harry Potter's popularity, what was IGN going to do? Same for this game. It was going to sell well in China. There was no stopping that. Yeah. And here's the thing. I think you really overestimate the ability of media to influence the game. Exposure, yeah, but if the game looks good, you're not going to sync it with J.K. Rowling's position for the Harry Potter game. You're not going to sync it with some comments made in an IGN article about a guy who I was a co-founder in the studio. Like, how much involvement did that guy even have in this game? I would guess probably not much. N2 Bear Hugs wrote, congrats to the artists who probably gave their all to make this game live up to the hype. F those in charge in China's political influence for inexcusable misogyny, creepiness, and censorship. You do not have to agree with China or this game's political influence or misogyny or anything. Like, listen, I do not agree with China's take on, like, enslaving and basically genociding Uyghurs, like Uyghur Muslims. I don't, there's so many things you can still be upset with China for and still choose to support this game, because guess what? It's a nation of over 1 billion people. I'm going to guess not every single one of them is communist dictators. In fact, probably the majority of them aren't, because you can only have so many communist dictators. It was a similar situation with Atomic Hearts when that came out. Everybody, oh, if you wanted to play Atomic Hearts, which I didn't play, but I had no political stance on the game. I wouldn't mind checking it out, I guess, at some point in the future. But a lot of people were equating that to supporting Putin, because it's just absolute craziness to think that everything coming out of nations of hundreds of millions of people has to reflect the values of the leadership of those nations. I don't understand that mindset, and I would encourage anybody who is in that mindset to really reevaluate their positions, because it's just a bizarre way to think. Anyways, I could go on and on with this article, but I just don't want to make the video too long, and really a lot of these issues are rehashing. The game is fun. I don't think that Game Science is unreasonable to not want to respond to these statements, because they realize what the intention of what the West is trying to gin up against this game is solely to damage the game. And there are some people, I think, that are anti-woke who are probably supporting this game for the wrong reasons. But at the end of the day, it is a good game, and it's going to live and stand as a good game. If it was an awful game, I don't care how many anti-woke people there were out there supporting it, it would still not succeed. In the end, good products will rise to the top, and really the political influence of all of this is much more minimal than I think a lot of people who are in the thick of it really give it credit for. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you found this useful, and we will catch you next time. Until then, guys, get awesome.